All right, hey everybody, welcome. We're going to do our last project review before the end of the semester as we get to the end of Part A here in environmental science. So tonight we are going to talk a little bit about the land conservation project and what are the expectations for it. But before we do that, I want to go over a little bit about land conservation, touch on a couple of key points in the lesson, and then we'll move into the project and talk a little bit about what are those requirements to kind of give you an idea of what I'm looking for. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about what the objectives of not only the lesson but really the project seek to find from you. So you should be able to talk a little bit about the origin and the problems that exist with national parks, wildlife refuges, um, preserves in the U.S. as well as other countries as it relates to land conservation. Hopefully, after you've gone through all this, you'll be able to talk a little bit about the trade offs between conservation and economic development, and then finally be able to discuss and list the issues that are related to the design of protected lands. So, let's take a few minutes here and talk a little bit about land conservation. Okay. Your lesson really dives into a lot about protection, and when you look at protecting land across the globe, what we find is that we have a lot of areas of land where nature is left largely alone and safe from the threat of human development. However, there are areas that are not. But going back to these large packs of land that are set aside, what we see are that these areas provide locations where the tremendous biodiversity on our planet is protected, um, and are there exclusively for the enjoyment of nature. Okay, and those areas that exist for that purpose really are national parks, um, wildlife refuges, and designated wilderness areas. So, they're there because biodiversity is important on our planet, which is one of the projects that we did this year. Um, and really, this kind of culminates everything that we've really been working on in environmental science the first half of the year. So, um, when you look at a lot of government-sponsored conservation areas, national parks, for example, we talk a lot about um, how much federal funding goes into those parks, and what is a national park, being the land that is declared to own by the national government and is protected from development and pollution. Okay, so some of the national parks that we talk about um, throughout the semester and in discussions are like Yellowstone, Yosemite, Arches, Great Smoky Mountain, um, the Everglades, for example. All of these have um, a tremendous amount of biodiversity, but are also protected by our federal government. Okay, so when you look at U.S. national parks today, the park system really has grown to about 370 national parks and historic sites, monuments, and recreation areas. Okay, and when you look at our national park system, really about 300 million people visit it every year. Okay, but our parks are facing problems. Okay, just like everything in environmental science, we talk about crowding and too many people. We have tons of people that visit every national park, on weekends, on holidays, over the summer. So that crowding creates a whole bunch of other perpetual issues like threats to wildlife that can exist. We as tourists, we love to photograph and get close to wildlife, but that can also be detrimental. Um, Development is another issue. Development just outside park boundaries are encroaching in because as more people want to come to parks, you need locations to stay for these trips. So, urban development has become a problem. Invasive species, which we talked about earlier in this year, are becoming a problem for national parks. Okay, they make their way into the parks, whether it be through tourists or through construction activities. Air pollution is obviously a serious threat, and of course, one of the big ones now as our energy crisis continues. Mining and oil interests always threaten national parks and obviously push these organizations that want to mine and oil. They want to push to dig and drill in park areas for their economic gain. So those are some of the threats that we see to not just national parks, but wildlife refuges, as well as um, even so much as designated wilderness areas. So land conservation really is an important issue. Um, it's something that we need to be mindful of as we are stewards of the planet, and of course, and as population grows. um, you know, Conservation is going to be a key, and it's going to be something that um, your generation, you as future stewards, are going to have to think about. So let's take a few minutes now and talk a little bit about this project. Okay, so the project on land conservation asks you to just take a look at the 5 questions that relate to protected lands, and answer each. And you should have a good handle on your documentation of how you answer these. So support your answers with research. You can use that research in the lessons, or you can use internet sources. Okay. So why or under what circumstances might it be hard to establish a large area of protected land? Okay, so think about, for this question, think about, what we just discussed. The reasons why land is becoming hard pressed to find and protect. Okay. The second question asks, how can habitat corridors be beneficial to species that need large areas in which to live and move around? Okay. So again, think in terms of the spatial issues and the issues and the current issues that are plaguing these organizations as they try to protect biodiversity. Okay. 3 is, what are 2 benefits provided by protected lands such as national parks? And again, you can find this question using your lesson. 4, how could buffer zones help mitigate the problems of overcrowding, development, pollution, and invasive species? Again, you can use the information on buffer zones that are found in your lesson, or you can certainly go out and find a resource online. Just make sure you let me know where you get that information from. And then finally, tourism for wildlife viewing and outdoor recreation can be a welcoming source of income for many developing countries. This is sometimes referred to as ecotourism. Make a list of 3 things you think a country's government could do in order to make sure that ecotourism does not do more good than harm. And again, just thinking about keeping conservation in mind and the issues that we talked about that our national parks and these designated areas are facing, think about how you could use those things, specifically those 6 things, and list how you could put stipulations on those things to keep them from becoming an issue. Okay. So those are the 5 questions that the project seeks to answer. You can do it in the submission box down below here, or you can do it by doing a Word document. It doesn't much matter to me. Again, it should have somewhere around 350 words to complete this, or a little bit more. Spelling and grammar are important, so please make sure that you're cognizant of that. And if you get stuck throughout the week, certainly seek me out in the virtual office, or give me an email, and I'll be more than happy to help you. Um, Next week, we will just have a review session as we get ready for the end of the semester. And then the following week is really the end of the semester, so there will be we won't be having any more projects. So the next time we'll be doing some more project work for environmental sciences is really the first week of February. So we'll be back here in that first Monday in February to start a new semester. So as you guys are wrapping up, I wish you well. And if there's anything that I can do for you in the meantime, please certainly don't hesitate to ask. It's been a pleasure this first semester. I'm looking forward to a great second semester. And if there's anything that I can do, I'd be more than happy to help. Have a great week, everybody.